Volkswagen joins Mercedes in unnecessarily adding AI to their cars.
Have you ever wondered what your car's thinking about?
So if you say like play music, it's not going to slam on the brakes.
Yeah.
I hope it gets sassy and it says you're already in your car. Look out the window.
It's like, why can't a car just be a car? Gaming on Linux is getting slightly less niche. You can say it's emulating a Windows environment, but it's not what most people think of when they think of an emulator.
Is it the year of the Linux desktop?
I think it is. This year. It's got to be this year. Hello, how the tech are you? My name is HK Perrin, and this week I've got two very interesting stories. First one is Volkswagen joins Mercedes in unnecessarily adding AI to their cars. Debuting at CES, Volkswagen is adding an LLM, a large language model, to their vehicle voice assistant called IDA. I'm not sure what IDA stands for. In-dash assistant, maybe? I don't know. The LLM is from a company called Cerence. I think that's how you pronounce it. CERENCE. And the model that it uses is based on an OpenAI model. So probably ChatGPT, but I can't say that for sure. Volkswagen is quoted as saying it offers, quote, enriching conversations, clearing up questions, interacting in intuitive language, receiving vehicle-specific information, and much more, purely hands-free, unquote. The reason I say that this is unnecessary is because your phone already does this, and you have your phone with you when you're in the car, pretty much everyone always. So I don't think a car needs to be adding these kinds of features that are like dependent on like certain technologies in the car that seem unnecessary, that are just going to add, cost to manufacturing and buying these cars for really like zero benefit.
Have you ever wondered what your car's thinking about?
Hopefully, drive.
So this will not be connected to any part of the car that would be, I don't know, in any way dangerous. It's not driving the car, right?
So from what I understand from the article, it has access to the in-car entertainment system, but it doesn't have access to things like the brakes or the accelerator.
So if you say play music, it's not going to slam on the brakes.
Yeah.
when it gets confused.
And the article also goes into the IDA, their voice assistant, actually has two parts to it. It's got an in-vehicle part that if it can answer a question, so if you say something along the lines of maybe like, what's the weather? And it wakes on the keyword hello IDA. So you say, hello IDA, what's the weather? If it can answer that with only information it has locally, it'll do that. If not, it will connect to the internet and send that voice data supposedly anonymously, but I mean, can we really trust that it's anonymous? Up to Volkswagen's servers or Cerence's servers, whoever's running the servers, and that the AI model on those servers will answer it, and your car will play back that.
I hope it gets sassy and it says you're already in your car. Look out the window.
That would be hilarious, but probably not helpful. But also, yeah, why would you be asking the weather while you're in your car?
I guess if you're in your garage, but again, you can just open the garage door.
Well, you could
if
be
you're asking what's the forecast for the next few hours, that makes sense.
But you don't need a large you don't need a large language model for that, right? The car could just it could just check like the weather channel or something, and it could be like, here you go, it's on your screen.
Yeah, I don't think there's really anything that an LLM can do that you should be doing while you're driving. They're talking about having enriching conversations with it. It's like, you're fucking driving. Pay attention to the road.
Well, the other issue is it's, how much these LLMs have a tendency to lie, right? Ask what the weather is, and it's like, oh, it's a hurricane.
Yeah.
Blue sky outside. I can see it might be useful if you're asking if what's the weather at your destination, or what will the weather be when you get to your destination?
Yeah, but you also don't need an LLM for that.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You do need some sort of natural language processing.
Right.
Yeah, but there are lots of other NLP systems that aren't LLMs.
That's true.
So the thing here's what you do. You're driving to from here. Let's say I'm driving to Sacramento. That's 2 hours. So I go, hey, what's the weather in Sacramento? And then it pulls up the weather in Sacramento, and then it shows the time. And I just look at the 2 hours from now time in Sacramento and be like, oh, the weather there is going to suck because the weather always sucks in Sacramento. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is this is absolutely useless. There's nothing here for anyone. It's just a feature that they can kind of add to a checkbox. I can't imagine this doing anything. It's just going to be distracting.
And the fact that it's now Volkswagen and Mercedes both doing this, like, I'm pretty sure like there's going to be a flood of all these cars that have LLMs in them, like built into them. It's like, why can't a car just be a car?
Some of this stuff is useful, but not this. Yeah. Like being able to ask your car, what's the weather like in Sacramento, instead of having to mess with something. And you can just glance over real quick and see that it's sunny and then go back to like what you were doing. That's no different than like glancing over your radio to change, like to skip a song or whatever. And that's fine.
But also you have things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which ostensibly do the exact same thing, but like it's already on something. Like I could be like watching a YouTube video or listening to a podcast on my phone, get in my car, and because my phone is my car's like infotainment system, that starts playing in my car.
Right.
Like, why would I want something other than that?
Right. And then you ask this LLM, can we finish listening to the podcast that I was listening to on my phone? And the LLM is like, I don't like that podcast. I don't want to listen to another. Or you ask the
LLM, can you listen to this podcast for me?
Right. Yeah, the LLM then just starts listening to it and summarizes it for you. Because this is the intellectual Dollar Tree. You were on this show. You don't need to listen to it.
Of course, it makes everything up about the podcast.
Right. These are two intellectuals, academics, actually, talking about the greatest minds the world has to offer. And you're like, that's the introduction for our competition, Decoding the Gurus. Stop it. Yeah, you're right. This is useless. That I can't imagine this being useful. I mean, you were saying that your phone, but even just like a standard car entertainment system from 5 years ago that has like rudimentary voice recognition could give you the information that you would need. It can navigate to places. It can tell you what the weather in Sacramento is going to be. It's just not doing it in an annoying way. Like this will just do the exact same things that it's always done. It will just do it in the most annoying way possible. And you won't be able to really trust the results.
Yeah, I don't want AI in my car, please.
At least not until it's smart enough to tell you to leave it alone and drive. If it's like, sir, you're traveling at a very high rate of speed, you might want to consider slowing down. Okay, the AI could do that, right?
Yeah.
Well, as long as maybe the AI doesn't like call the police and like rat on me.
Oh, well, that's But also cars have that built in too, where you could disable it, right? But there's cars that start dinging at you if you exceed like 80 miles an hour in the car. They've had that forever. There's also just a red line on speedometers so that you know that you're speeding because in addition to the red line on your tachometer, there's some old speedometers have like there's a little red line that goes around the outside of it over 75 or 80 to let you know that you're in the zone where you're going kind of fast, especially on some of them older cars that get speed wobbles and shit.
Well, how else are you going to go back in time?
Right. Yeah, this is stupid. I imagine it is just like you were talking about when you were reading your notes on it. It was just going to be another way in which either the car manufacturer or the company, I'm going to call them Seance because it's summoning AI demons while you're driving, is collecting like information about you that even if it's randomized can be very trivial to attach it to you after the fact if someone wanted to.
Yep. Like your car's got to have an IP address. So if they're logging that data, which they almost definitely are, they can match the IP address to you. Even if they're anonymizing that data, you could still de-anonymize it.
Didn't we do a story on how bad the privacy is on cars nowadays?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That came out of Mozilla. They were talking about how essentially cars are like absolutely atrocious for like invading your privacy.
Right, because you don't read the TOS on anything, but you certainly don't read the TOS for the entertainment center in your car.
Yeah, and like what are you going to do? Like disagree? Be like, no, I don't agree to that. And then like this like $35,000 machine you just bought doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
They're holding all the cards apparently. All right, what do you got next?
All right, my next story is actually a feel-good story, especially compared to that last one. Gaming on Linux is getting slightly less niche, ending 2023 on a multi-year high. So Linux closed out 2023's Steam hardware survey with a 1.97% market share. That may not sound like a lot, but it's around half a percentage point higher, or a 33% increase since last year. And that can largely be attributed to the Steam Deck, which has a 40% share of that Linux market on Steam. I personally own 2 Steam Decks, one for my own personal gaming and one for development, actually. When I thought I would develop for Steam Deck, and then turns out unless you're developing a game, Valve doesn't want it. So anyway, I have 2 Steam Decks now, which is pretty cool because they're great devices. And yeah, the Steam Deck has increased Linux popularity on Steam.
Is it the year of the Linux desktop?
I think it is. This year. It's got to be this year. It's definitely the year of the Linux desktop.
So how did they come up with these statistics, and could it be actually lower numbers? Because, a lot of people do, emulators or something, or not an emulator, to run Windows games on Linux.
So this is coming from Valve themselves. So Valve does a hardware and software survey every month.
Okay.
They will sample a subset of their users. If you ever open up Steam and you get like a pop-up that says like, hey, you've been selected for the hardware survey, would you like to contribute? You can view what all information they collect, and you can decide to contribute it. I always do, just because I like to see that Linux number go up, and I'm always on Linux, so yeah.
I wonder if Linux users opt out because they're like, you know what, screw you. I don't want you collecting this information about me that you already have.
There very well might be a lot of Linux users who do not do it. Linux users are, we're pretty well known for like, no, I don't want you collecting telemetry data on me.
But then just by them displaying it to you, it's clear that they already have.
I mean, it's opt-in. You can choose not to send it. It comes up and it asks you, like, would you like to participate? And if you say yes, then it's like, okay, here's what we're going to send. Do you want to send it? And then you can choose to send it or not. So this survey is basically a subset of all Steam users. So it's not everyone, but it is a pretty good sample of the kind of hardware and software that Steam users use. Which obviously this is a self-selected sample of gamers. Like, you're not talking about like people who only use their computer for office work because they don't use Steam. So, take that as you may. But in terms of like gaming in particular, Linux is gaining in popularity, and I love to see that.
Yeah, we'll see. It's not the year of the Linux desktop. I made that up.
It never is.
It never will be. It never will be. But
I will have to say, like, I am playing more games on Linux now, but my problem's always been like, some things work just fine on Linux and some things either don't, like I can never get it working, or it's just such a hassle and then it stops working and it's a hassle getting it working again that it's just not worth it to do it. So
I would say
more gaming works.
That used to be a much more common experience.
Yeah.
But Proton, which is the compatibility layer you were talking about, so Proton is not necessarily something I would call an emulator. It does not do like hardware emulation, is what I mean. Like, it doesn't make your system look like another system. What it does is it translates these Windows system API calls that the game is making into Linux system API calls. So it makes the game think that it's running in a Windows environment, and it will answer, Windows API calls. But in the background, it's actually the Linux kernel doing the job, and the Linux graphics drivers doing the job. And it supports DirectX. It supports OpenGL and Vulkan. Vulkan is natively supported on Linux anyway, as is OpenGL. But DirectX, Direct3D, those APIs are Microsoft specific. And what Proton will do, specifically in Proton, there's something called VKD3D, which is a Vulkan to Direct 3D to Vulkan translation layer. That one specifically for DirectX 12, and then there's another one for the older versions of DirectX, but I don't remember its name. But that will allow you to play Windows games on Linux at native speeds, sometimes even faster. I know for sure I have had more luck playing older Windows games on Linux than I have on actual Windows. Like on Windows, you need all sorts of like hacks for the game. Like I tried playing American McGee's Alice recently. I could not get it working on Windows 10 at all. I downloaded all the hacks that people have made to say like, replace the EXE with this one and then it'll work on Windows 10, and nothing worked.
And now your Windows 10 computer has
on Linux.
Now your Windows 10 computer has software polio too.
Probably, yeah. I probably installed like several viruses doing that. But
So-
with Linux, all I had to do was run like from the CD image, run the installation exe. It installed in like a virtual Windows environment, and now I can run American McGee's Alice. And I've been playing through it, which is really cool.
So Proton is based on Wine, and Wine is one of those recursive acronyms that says Wine is not an emulator.
Yep.
So
Yeah, that's why I said, wait, it's not not an emulator. So remember, that's what Wine stood for.
But
I mean,
Proton
you
is
could
getting
call
really
it an emulator. You can say it's emulating a Windows environment, but it's not what most people think of when they think of an emulator. Most people are thinking of like a hardware emulator.
right.
If you're emulating like an N64, you're making your computer pretend to be N64 hardware and act like N64 hardware. Whereas with Wine, all these systems are written for x86, x86 64, which is like AMD's 64-bit addition to the x86 instruction set architecture. So they're all written for the processor that you're using. They're just written for a different environment.
So Proton is getting really good, and people are using it for a lot of things other than games too. They're just saying, I don't know how it works because I don't really use Steam, but you can basically use the Proton that's built into Steam for non-Steam games, and people are just saying, oh, Adobe Illustrator is not a Steam game, and they're just getting it to work. And that's great. That's great. It's good. And I think primarily the reason I bring that one up is like when people are like, oh, I can't leave Windows because of the Adobe suite. I think Proton is going to make that concern a thing of the past.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right. Well, that's great news. It's the year of the Linux desktop.
It certainly is. Thank you for tuning in to How the Tech Are You? We do this show every week, and we put it out into 3 segments on YouTube, and we also put it out as a podcast. If you'd like that you can find that at echoplexmedia.com, along with all our other shows. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll have a recommended video here on the screen for you to check out next.